Welcome back to another episode of Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times. And this is the downtown center of Ulaanbaatar, or UB City, or the capital of Mongolia. And it's June 21st. And it was snowing today. It was snowing today. I didn't sign up for this, but here I am. But the good news is that today's episode is a really informative one. When we started with our very first event in Las Vegas back in 2016, we thought that testimonies would be so nearly impossible to get. Live testimonies where people show their face. And we felt like female testimonies would be even more complicated, more dramatic of an acquirement. And yet we found in the very beginning. And since then, we've started a movement of women who take Ascend. Ascend is not just for men, it's not just for young men, it's for people of all ages, men and women. And today we have a testimony from a young lady so that you can understand this perspective, this unique perspective that is commonly felt but seldom explored and discussed. So that's what today's all about, is discussing something that isn't often discussed. So let's get into it. Enjoy, everybody.
Okay, so yes, we are here to share testimonies from other sisters that have gone through Hainan programs and they are willing to share the story. And we're very grateful to hear this time Nami. And I want to welcome you to introduce yourself first, and then we can go on from there.
Hello, my name is Nami Nagai. I'm 23, soon to be 24. I'm currently blessed recently in the April 2024 blessing, and we've been in the process for about a year before that. So, and currently, yes, I'm originally from LA, but I moved to Georgia, and I'm Secretary General helping out very closely with the pastors and raised the Atlanta Family Church. What else? Anything else to introduce?
Studies?
Oh,
Anything?
so I did 3 years of Generation Peace Academy, and I graduated GPA in 2022. After that, I went back to LA, where I was from, but then after that year, I moved to Georgia in 2023 of July. So it's been about a year since I've been here. In terms of school, I did community college for a little bit, but decided I wanted to go straight into the working field. So right now, along with helping out with the church here in Georgia, I want to get into the wedding industry. So I work for a wedding company, helping out as a wedding assistant.
Wow, that's very cool. Interesting. I never met one before. That's so cool. So you help out with like events, with weddings and stuff like that?
Mainly weddings,
Mm-hmm.
and I help assist the day of the special day
Mm-hmm.
with
Okay.
being with the bride and groom, or
Mhm.
making sure the venue looks nice and everything's where it needs to be.
That's so interesting. Yeah. Okay, so you are very young. Wow. And you just got the blessing. It's like very recently, right? That's so cool. Congratulations. And yeah, so we're here to talk about a little bit of your experience with Hainun and, you know, everything afterwards. So can you tell us how you first met Hainun and then how you first joined your first program?
So I believe I first heard about High Noon back when I was in maybe high school of 2016. I was probably a sophomore at that time. And I remember I was at a Cheonpyeong 40-day workshop, or maybe
Mhm.
GTGY in Korea.
Ah, see.
And I think somebody from High Noon came by and they started talking about um, sexual integrity and pornography. maybe it wasn't called High Noon at that time, or it was still starting up. But that's when I first heard about, already before, when I was like in middle school or late elementary, like fifth grade, was when I got exposed to pornography. And I didn't really understand the causes of watching it until probably that guidance that we received from one of the older second gen, and they started talking about the effects of pornography and how it's corrupting the minds of the young people, and it's basically like an addiction and a drug. And I think hearing about it, it made me like worry, because at the time the statistics were that it's higher in males or guys, and
Yeah.
then the statistics for females was lower. So
Yeah.
seeing that, I felt very like, oh man, I'm like weird or an alien or something is wrong with me. And it made me not want to speak. At that guidance, they're saying, seek help, but the fact that the statistics for women was lower, I felt
Yeah.
even more scared to confront someone about it or share to someone. And so after that, I didn't really think about it or work on my sexual integrity until after GPA, when before we graduated, they offered a program for the GPA graduates saying, hey, there's a 6-week summer challenge for those who are graduating GPA, collaborating with High Noon. And yeah, and I knew like the biggest thing, I'm really grateful for GPA because it was an environment where I can fully work on myself and my faith. But I knew once I come out of this, I needed to work on myself, kind of more taking ownership and independently.
Yeah.
And so I realized this area of my life, my sexual integrity, I know I can't do it by myself. And them giving this opportunity for us, I felt I need to take it. And so I joined that 6-week program after GPA. And I think that was me making that determination to join, I felt was the start of this whole recovery journey. And prior to that too, the first time I spoke about it to anyone was, I think that's when I started actively working on my sexual integrity and seeking out help and joining a program. But before that, I actually did confront and share to my parents. And before that, what helped me was an older sister figure who was actually part of High Noon. And she was like one of the first females, I think, on High Noon. That kind of, her speaking up about it at a summer camp helped me to share with my own parents. And I'm really grateful for her, because without her sharing her testimony, because of that, it made it easier for me to have the courage to share with my own parents. And from then, it felt like I wasn't really hiding anything from my parents. But then after that, it felt like I wasn't actively working on it. It was just I shared it, nothing really, no follow-up after.
Right.
Then after GPA is when I reached back out to her. That was my summer camp leader, and she became my mentor. I don't know if you want to censor her name out, but she is part of High Noon. My Thurston.
Yes.
So
I thought it was her. Yeah.
My Thurston was my summer camp leader, and yeah, she really helped me along the way, and yeah, I'm truly grateful for her. So I think even in terms of starting your sexual integrity journey, takes one person to step up and share about their testimony and become a support for those who may be struggling with it or going through it. And so the reason why I feel so compelled to share my story is that anyone out there who is also struggling or who was and is trying to work on overcoming it, being able to share is like the biggest, I guess, strength or your biggest launch pad to start your recovery.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much for being able to share. And how was your parents' reaction to you sharing?
Yeah, the whole thing of how it happened at that summer camp particularly, it wasn't like they talked about pornography or anything at that summer camp. This
Yeah.
was after 2016. I think I was like a junior going into my senior year. And at that summer camp, they told us participants to write letters to our parents back at home.
Yeah.
And so I think in my heart, I wanted to share something to my parents. And so in the letter, I said, hey, in Japanese, I said, hey, I want to tell you guys something once I get back home from camp. But I didn't realize that the actual camp staff would send it back home to our parents. So I just wrote it on a whim. But then when I got home from camp, my parents were like, oh, we got your letters from camp. And we're excited to hear what you want to share with us. Or it said you had something to share. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, shoot. So I think that kind of pushed me more to actually share with them. But I think I was also kind of didn't know how to put the words to share about this topic because my parents are both Japanese. They came from Japan. They barely understand English. So I knew, and even for me, I didn't know how to say these words like porn or, pornography, sexual integrity in Japanese. So I had to write out a letter using Google Translate to translate what I wanted to say in Japanese.
Okay.
And I sat them down in the living room and I read this letter that I wrote. And as I was reading it, I was like crying because it's something I've never shared with anyone besides my and I didn't know what my parents would react or how they would react. I think I was kind of a bit scared of how they would see me. But after I read my letter, my parents kind of just like received what I said and said it's okay. It's still kind of a blur because it's been like a while back in high school, but I just remember I felt a lot of grace and acceptance from my parents. And even my dad, like, he was very understanding and he was kind of sharing about, I guess, his own personal experience and kind of a little bit putting the blame on himself, like, oh, it's because of me that you're struggling with it. Because maybe in the past, assuming from what he said, is that it's probably an area that he struggled into. So in terms of like ancestral like indemnity or things that we go through lineage. So my parents are just very accepting and kind of thanking me for sharing so honestly. And after sharing, I think I felt a lift off my shoulders. So that's kind of how it was sharing with my parents.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's also so hard, right? The language barrier there, not being able to share fully. But yeah, I'm glad that that was your experience. And while, yeah, next you said that you sure, but there wasn't that much of a follow up, right? Because at that time you weren't in any Hainan groups, or Hainan wasn't in your picture at the moment. So then you did GPA, right? And then you joined Hainan. Um, so you were saying that joining the Hainan group was mainly a decision to kind of like actively work on something so that you would take ownership of your growth, of your journey. So can you tell us how was that experience, that first summer challenge?
Yeah, I think the first 6 weeks and hearing about more in detail of the effects of pornography. I think a lot of times when people struggle with any addiction, they kind of associate that problem as if they're the problem or that something's
Mm-hmm.
wrong with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of what um, limits us from wanting to overcome these
Mm-hmm.
different challenges or habits, because we don't see it as apart from ourselves.
Right.
So when I started receiving, I guess, more education during the program, we'd have readings and we read about the addiction cycle. I think that is still a big thing that I go back to, because with any addiction, not only pornography, but even
Mm.
addictions like bad eating habits or
Yeah.
generic drugs and alcohol, is that there's this common cycle that we go on loop, because I always have to like look back at the cycle, but it's this
Yeah.
constant, like, we slip, we do a bad habit, or there's something that's causing us
Mm-hmm. Like a
like a
pain.
feeling or emotion,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then we slip, then we accuse ourselves, we feel guilt, then we relapse again, we keep going
Yeah.
in this cycle,
Yeah.
and it's such a dangerous cycle to be in. But
Yeah.
once I saw visually, because I'm a visual learner, when I see
Mm.
that there is actual like science behind it, it made me feel like, okay, I'm not the I'm not the problem. Like,
Right.
there is some kind of background thing that's happening that's
Yeah.
making me feel stuck in this. And I realized that there is a way out of it. It's not
Mm.
it's not gonna be forever, but
Right.
I can get out of this cycle. But I need to recognize how to get myself out of the cycle. And High Noon, these programs teach you how to do that,
Mm.
and not just how to avoid it, but what are better alternatives. Um, yeah, and they talk about, right, the green circle coping
Mm.
mechanisms, and then the yellow, the
Yeah.
red. We want to avoid the red and yellow,
Yeah.
and figure out healthy ways of understanding our stress, how we cope with them,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, because everyone goes through like stress and all these things. So it's how we deal with it that can cause
Yeah.
us to lean towards these unhealthy habits.
Right.
And yeah, joining the program, it's opened my mind to see, like, yeah, I think overall just understanding, through that I can understand myself more.
Hey everybody, Andrew Love here, and I'm sorry to interrupt this program with an ad, but it's a really important reminder, okay, that high noon living is about taking continual intentional actions, steps towards your ideal self, your chanuguk self. So I would love for you to just stop and pause at this moment in the podcast and think about what actions could you be taking? How could you be more intentional Do you need to sign up for our courses? Do you need to possibly create a North Star goal? You can go back to one of our earlier episodes about that. But we as staff, everybody in the high noon world is always about taking the Kaizen approach of continual improvement. So please consider, how can you step into your ideal self more today?
Because I realized when you want to change yourself, you first need to understand what exactly is it that you need to change. And in order to change that, High Noon allows you to dig deeper. What caused you to feel that stimulated to have that maybe negative habit or quality? And it takes a more reflective route, being more observant about your daily life, yourself. And I think in terms of that helped me to become that helped me to understand more about myself in terms to prepare for the matching. Because when you want to go into the matching process, you want to know who you are, not only what kind of person you want to be with, but in order to know that, I'm sure your other person that's also wanting to seek you as a spouse wants to know what you're like. And if you don't know who you are, then that's kind of not good. So you need to know who you are, what your strengths and weaknesses are. So I think even High Noon prepared me for that, the next step.
Yeah, totally. Wow. That's really cool. You already gave a bit of introduction to everything that it's the inner, sexual integrity work, and how, we start with sexual integrity, but it actually allows you to, work on everything, right? In every aspect. And it's not only sexual integrity, but, we start there and then we go deeper into everything, right? Yeah, it's really cool. And yeah, that's what we do in the programs. So yeah, then you did the summer challenge, then what you did after the summer challenge.
After that 6 weeks, so that was a 6-week summer challenge program. After that, I realized that 6 weeks is just the beginning. And I felt I needed to still continue working on my sexual integrity, but I felt it's nice to have a group of people to work, I guess, knowing that you're overcoming it together. And so I joined High Noon Ascend, which is they have men and women. So I joined the women one, and that's a 12-week program. So it's a little bit longer, so double the first amount. And I think that was a really good experience in terms of content, very similar education, but I think something different that they applied in this Ascend program was they did more one-on-one check-ins. So you would kind of text, they're like your accountability. So you text your facilitator or your mentor how you're doing, how you're feeling. And I think during that 12 weeks, they recommend that you find an accountability partner. So that's when I was actively talking more with Mai, and we would check in every once a week. And even with my sexual integrity, I could see it gradually improving with her, because at first we would call once a week. And if I were to slip or anything were to happen, or I felt like I was nearing my edge and I needed to talk, I can text her and say, hey, I want to call. But gradually, the more we would check in, she would give me a little bit of like guidance and really help me understand my own thoughts and emotions deeper through sharing with her. Our calls and how far apart they went from week by week to maybe once every 2 weeks. And then when I felt like, okay, I can go without having, or like managing my own level of understanding of myself,
Mhm.
those 2 weeks became like maybe once a month.
Right.
So even within that, I can see my improvement in terms of understanding myself better through having an accountability partner. And whenever I did slip, I would tell her honestly,
Mhm.
and she was always coming from a place of full acceptance, complete grace, and
Mhm.
just love as God's extension and vessel. So when I can share with her honestly, she is able to help me in my journey. So yeah, I recommend alongside going through the program, finding an accountability partner.
Mhm.
And yeah, that hand in hand will help you even more in your recovery.
Mhm.
And then also during that whole year, so this was when I was still in LA before I moved to Georgia.
Mhm.
So 2022 to 2023. And yeah, I really utilized all of High Noon's podcasts. Like
Mhm.
every week when a new podcast would come out, I'd listen to the
Mhm.
podcast while I'm driving, and that
Yeah.
was became my ritual. Like
Mhm.
in LA, I was always driving a lot, so I was like, why not spend my time more wisely by listening to something that can actually I can learn from. And
Mhm.
yeah, there's a lot of topics on different things on the podcast on Spotify, so I would pick and choose sometimes. Yeah, I think it really helped me.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's like another type of conducte. Another activity, green activity, right? Green circle activity. Yeah. And yeah, and you mentioned that High Noon in a way prepared you for your then matching process, right? And your blessing. So beyond knowing yourself, how will you say or how do you feel coming into High Noon program helped you?
Mm, I think the biggest one is, I guess, for starting off, like when I went into the matching process, I was open upfront saying, hey, this is an area where I'm still working on, or this is something that I've struggled with in the past, and
Mm.
maybe an area I need support in
Mm.
from my spouse. And yeah, I think even just being open about that to while I was in the process helped
Mhm.
me um, in our communication.
Mhm.
But I think the biggest thing that High Noon has helped me with is communication,
Mm.
because you're gonna need that a lot when you're a couple.
Yeah.
And um, if when I did slip, like I would tell my partner,
Mm.
but in terms of like more the basic things, like just how I'm feeling emotionally, I tend
Mm.
to bottle a lot of stress, and
Right.
that's just kind of my personality. But when you're in a relationship, it's not just you. Now you have another person to share and be vulnerable with. But if you're not
Mm.
vulnerable, then how would they know, and how can they, you know, be
Yeah.
there to support you? So there's a lot of times where I realize that High Noon has helped me become a better communicator
Mm.
to prepare me for my matching and blessing. Now that I am
Mm.
blessed, it's like you're always going to have to work on communication. And
Yeah.
when you're with your mentor or accountability partner, if you don't step up and share and reach out to them, then they won't know that you're struggling or you slipped, or you're like nearing your edge, when you can speak up, share, be vulnerable, you are returned with grace and understanding always. And when you can practice that in your sexual integrity journey, it can greatly be applied in your blessed life, in your matching process, and in your blessed life. Yeah, really, the 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 motto of High Noon is a life without shadows. And when you can constantly share honestly with your spouse, there would be nothing pulling you guys apart.
Yeah, you said it. Super. Yeah, that's totally right. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I guess I want to pose a couple of questions that came up because recently I've been hearing a couple of sisters that just joined Sen, right? And a lot of them, they would say, I thought I could do everything on my own, and I didn't want to believe that I couldn't do things on my own, like preparing for the matching or even, working on their sexual integrity. So, how's that, you know, moment of reaching out for help, like to even the first program or to your mentor? How did you came to that decision, and did you struggle with the fact that you weren't doing things alone and that you wanted to do things alone? And how did group settings may have helped you or not? How was that for you?
Yeah, I think in terms of reaching out, for me, it was clear. I knew I couldn't do it by myself. So I knew I needed to reach out to someone. Like, if I really wanted to overcome, it's better to reach out to someone who has overcome it rather than going to someone who didn't even struggle with it, or
Yeah.
just trying to figure out on your own when trying to go through it on your own when there's so many other people who have kind of paved the path and you can just go to them. It's like a fast track, like even like career. If you know someone that has gone through that education path, it's good to just seek out advice from them, because maybe they'll give you helpful tips that maybe they had to work through, but then they made it easier for you. And I think that's, I guess, kind of a benefit of when you have people ahead of you and you aren't going through it alone. And I think it's recognizing that you're not going through it by yourself. So why try to recover by yourself when there are many people who have overcome it already? Reach out to those people and you'll have a better success rate. Kind of mindset for me.
Yeah.
And I think just realizing that, don't go through it by yourself. Like, there are many people who are willing and there to support you. You just have to seek out, and you seeking out is really the first step in your recovery journey. And I feel that is so true. Because you can be a really determined and strong-willed person to try to overcome it by yourself. But I think that in itself, you might go through a lot of difficult challenges and maybe walls along the way, that it could be much more helpful if you already have someone beside you who can guide you through those, hills and valleys. So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Definitely. And it's, as you're saying, it's like a fast track, right? You're getting help from someone that is a bit ahead of you, so they're pulling you up in a way, right? Um, yeah, and I guess the last thing for me, because you shared this before we started recording, so I guess I want to share that again for everyone to hear. Yeah, a lot of people have certain insecurities or fears around sharing this. And we, in High Noon, we believe sharing is very important, right? But we are not going to force anyone to share, right? It's at their own pace, at their own time. So, seems like you're very comfortable with sharing. And yeah, guys, I want to ask you why and how do you came to this point where you feel that you want to share.
Again, I want to reiterate this point that sharing is such a powerful weapon, is going to be your biggest, I'm not good at my
Armor.
vocabulary. Greatest power or strength
Yeah.
is sharing. And in my whole recovery journey, when I would share more, I realized that gives me more strength. That is what's giving me more strength to share even to more people and be even more determined to overcome this bad habit. And I guess a common phrase that I always am reminded of is like, evil like multiplies, or Satan hides in secrecy. So if you don't share about this to anyone, if this is something you're afraid of sharing, then that in itself is telling you that evil is growing, or you're not in your right space, and already your conscience is telling you like you need to share, but that guilty feeling means Satan's trying to prevent you from receiving God's grace. And when I the most public setting I shared about my own sexual integrity was after one of the high noon workshops. They asked for me to give a testimony in front of the whole church congregation, and I was like, this is a lot of people. Like, I don't mind sharing one-on-one
Right.
to sisters, but then now it's like a bigger group of people, and there's like both male and females. It's like, how are they going to see me? How are they going to judge me? But then I see younger girls in the crowd, in the congregation, younger sisters, my younger sisters, and knowing how I already struggled with it in the age of like 9, maybe even younger. It's like, it could be highly likely that these sisters this is something they're struggling in. And if they don't hear from an older sister, just like how when I can hear Mai's testimony, it gave me strength to want to share. And so I want to be that strength for someone else to be able to share and eventually overcome in their recovery journey. That's why I choose to share. And I think it's so important to share, because your voice can be a strength for someone else. And eventually them going through it and overcoming it, they can be a voice that can also be a strength to someone else afterwards. And we live in a society where Satan is already like, already destroying our minds, corrupting, everything that we interact with, movies, and like the younger the generation now, like they have access to technology and smartphones already at the age of like, even when they're toddlers, like parents give the phone to little kids now and to watch, Miss Rachel or whatever educational video. But one mistake of a ad or click on some random video can misguide them to watching pornography or any other addiction, or false education about true love and true ideals. And it's all in the access of our smartphones. So I'm already feeling that it's like we need to educate them early on, because already at an early age, children have smartphones and easy access to the web. How can we already be more open? We, just as much as Satan is like implementing all of this false love, we have to speak up about true love and educate youth about true love. so that they can know where to seek out love in the right places
Mm.
and not the wrong places.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That's so true. And again, you said it so beautifully. Thank you so much. I guess I want to give you the space one last time if you want to share something else for our audience, if there's anything last comments that you want to add.
I don't mind if anyone reaches out to me through like social media, Facebook, and if this is an area that you're struggling in, like I will gladly hear your story and from there make steps in what next steps for you to take in order to overcome this area of your life. But I think the first thing is sharing and the willingness to want to change. Because without that, you can consult with someone, they can tell you good tips, but if you're not willing to apply them in your life, then you're gonna stick to those bad habits. So really this willingness to want to be better, want to be the best daughter or child of God, and eventually the best wife for your future spouse and mother for your future children. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, so thank you so much, Nami, for sharing. And you heard her. If you wanna go to her at some point, if you maybe in person or something in social media, then you can contact her. You can have some of her experience in our groups, have a son. We have also marriage preparation programs now and for couples as well. And yeah, I think what Nami said about sharing as our strength is so important, right? Because it really is the first condition for us to then receive grace, to receive love, true love, and then, go on from there. So yeah, thank you so much, Nami. And yeah, hope to have you again and at some point. And thank you so much.
Hey, it's me again. And I just wanted to say you're doing amazing. At High Noon, we're always trying to find the boundaries between pushing you and hugging you, embracing you, letting you know that all of your effort is amazing. And I just wanted to remind you that every time you make progress in your own journey towards sexual integrity, the more that it's making it easier for somebody else. We are connected through this invisible web known as the collective. And every time the individual rises up and takes up more responsibility, levels up in their understanding of themselves and how to function in this world, the easier it is for your brothers, your sisters, your aunts, and your uncles. So keep it up. Earlier in this episode, I challenged you to step in more to your ideal self. And now I'm just letting you know you're already beautiful. You're amazing. But keep it up, okay? Good luck.